Usually, whenever I am talking about a particular piece of media, it's either because I absolutely love it and I want you guys to experience it yourself, or it's the opposite and I hate it and I don't want anyone to watch it because it's terrible. This movie is a bit different. I don't think I can recommend anyone watch this movie. Not necessarily because it's a bad movie, it is very well made. However, it deals with a lot of heavy issues. Because it's so heavy, I don't think I can recommend it. Content warning, by the way, in this video, we are going to be talking about stuff that relates to things that you're seeing on the screen. And yeah, so just a heads up, okay? Now that that's out of the way, let's get into it. We begin as our protagonist, Inho, joins a school as a teacher for disabled children. We see that he moves from Seoul to this remote town for this job. And the first quarter of this movie sets up the scene of the town and the mystery of the children from the school pretty well. Our protagonist is in a small town with children who are not like normal children. From what we see, they are not cheerful. They keep their distance from Inho. Some are even wary of him. On his first day as an art teacher, one of the kids comes to the class with bruises on his face. He notices another one of the girls in his class always seems despondent, and there's another one, and whenever we see her, she is always eating. So us and the protagonist start to wonder what is wrong with these kids. Inho ends up talking to another teacher and does some research in the school's database, and there we learn about the kids. The boy who came to the class with bruises on his face, well, his little brother died a few days ago. The girl who's always despondent, well, she's an orphan. And the last girl, well, the school's database says that she is mentally disabled with, quote, a voracious appetite. So we, the viewers, and Inho, we chalk up their behavior to, these kids are just having issues.
여기 애들을 보통 애들이랑 똑같이 생각하시면 안 돼요. 이 몸에 장애가 있으면 이게 마음의 장애로 이어지거든요.
Pretend you don't know the premise of this movie. It is very easy to imagine a million different possibilities. Maybe it's ghosts, maybe the town is cursed, maybe the kids are cursed. I don't know. It reminds me of Borrasca in a way, which deserves a video of its own. You never really truly know what's going on with both of these stories. You're given tidbits along the way. However, you don't really know what's going on. That is until the big reveal. And then everything, every little piece of information that you were given along the way falls into place and makes you sick to your stomach. One day as he's leaving school to go home, he hears screaming coming out of the girl's bathroom. He goes in to investigate. He is at the door, but the security guard stops him, saying that kids just do that. They like to make noises at night. It is what it is. And that's it. We don't see him go in to check. We don't see him asking the security guard to go in and check. None of that happens. The movie does a pretty good job of setting up the mystery. The big reveal happens around a quarter of the way into the movie. One day, again, as he's leaving school, he is guided by Yuri, that is one of the girls, to what looks like a basement. And there, Inho sees one of the teachers dunking a student's head in a running washing machine. And when asked about it, she just says, it's a disciplinary issue and he shouldn't intervene. Of course he does, and he takes her to a hospital. And this is where we learn the truth. Yondo, the girl who was taken to the hospital, she was essayed by the school's headmaster. more horrific details. Apparently, he wasn't successful because she was so young. And from here on, everything starts to unravel. The girl who always ate in host class, well, it's a similar story, but with repeat offenses with multiple different predators. And every time that she was essayed, she was given a little bit of money to go and buy some snacks. It was her coping mechanism. The boy who came to the class with bruises on his face, he was essayed by a teacher, Mr. Park, and he wasn't the only victim. It was him and his younger brother, who, because he couldn't take it anymore, ended up leaving this earth. These kids, though, even though they had went through so much, they were brave against all odds. They ended up going to the cops and telling them the truth of what happened. And then the same cop then went to the school and took bribes from the headmaster. And the children who tried to report what was going on, well, they were punished. Minsu, the boy, he was beat up by Mr. Park, the teacher. And Yondu, well, we know what happened to her. Now that Ino knows what's going on, he, along with the help of a human rights activist he met in town, Yujin, they both go and try to report these crimes and expose the truth. This is where they hit their first roadblock: bureaucracy. Yujin first goes to the cops, who are not helpful because they took bribe from the headmaster, so there's that. And of course, the cops are very ableist, essentially saying that how can they arrest someone based on the words of disabled children? And actually, they should take up the matter with the city hall. So they do. They do go to the city hall, and guess what? They tell her that, oh, actually, this doesn't fall under their jurisdiction because this happened on school grounds. So this is actually under the jurisdiction of the education department. So they go to the education department. Guess what? They say to her that, oh, actually, it's not under their jurisdiction because, well, this happened during off hours. So actually, it's under the city hall's jurisdiction. Yeah, bureaucracy. Every individual person that exists in the system is there to help, but they don't actually do anything. They don't actually help. Not because the individual people are being difficult and unwilling to help, but because the system is designed in a way that doesn't help the victims. Everyone is quote unquote doing their jobs, but no one is really helping. And frankly, in this story, we see Yujin try to navigate this bureaucracy. She is the human rights activist. She's not one of the victims. How is a victim of such a traumatic crime supposed to navigate this bureaucracy BS after their traumatic event? It's just not possible. And that's not even including the fact that most victims don't want to call the cops because they know the cops are not going to believe them. Or even if they do, the worst that's going to happen is the perpetrator is going to get a slap on the wrist, and oh no, that might actually make things worse for the victim. Who could have fucking thunk in that? At the end in the movie, we see that the story is picked up by the media, and finally, because the story goes viral, the perpetrators are finally arrested. And that is how the movie ends. You didn't think that that was really the end, did you? Oh, my sweet little child. You are very naive. The nightmare has just begun. We're halfway through the movie, and the rest of the movie focuses on the justice system. In reality, the justice system is a game. You can do certain things to stack the deck in your favor, especially if you have money or influence that can help a bit. A lot? Okay. And that is what we see in this movie. An absolute systematic failure of the justice system. The defense hired a lawyer who was previously a judge, and apparently in South Korea there's a law that favors lawyers who were previously judges in their first case, so they were able to purchase that advantage. the two testimonies from the defense. First is from the security guard, who is not going to testify against the headmaster because guess what? Firstly, because his livelihood depends on it. Second of all, he did pay a bribe to the headmaster so that he could get this job. So of course he doesn't testify against him. Rather, he lies and testifies for principal. The second person is a doctor who had examined Yuri before. Guess what? She had changed her report. Can you guess why? It's because she is in fact related to the principal, so of course she changed the report to favor him. And the prosecution? Well, all they have is the stories of the victims, the children. These children were forced to relive their trauma, some of the most painful, vulnerable moments of their lives in a room full of strangers. And for what exactly? Just to have the defense lawyers and others in court try to tear their stories apart, to twist the narrative, somehow suggest that they must have wanted it, or just to paint them as liars. In this case, we hear the defense say shit like,
정말 그렇게 어린 여자아이와 성인 남성의 성관계가 가능합니까? 설사 가능하다고 해도 여자아이의 자발적 동의 없이는 불가능한 일 아닙니까?
how could a child be ever responsible for what was done to them? The defense even goes as far as to weaponize the kid's disabilities, as if having a hearing disability means you must be completely deaf. It's as if the justice system turns into a twisted game where all anyone cares about is strategy and how they can win. And of course, then there's the doctor. She was like, well, Yuri was too calm during her examination. That's not like SA victims. So, since when does trauma have to have one look? As if there are not different ways of reacting. I don't know. What exactly? Are you supposed to cry and weep all day long for your trauma to be real? It is all just a game. Thankfully, the prosecution is able to dismantle their testimonies. But that's not the only thing up their sleeve. Once the kids started to testify, the defense realized how bad it's going to get, and so they shifted the strategy. Here comes the settlements. Two of the kids' parents ended up settling with the defense, Yuri and Mintsu. His guardians, his grandparents, settled the case without talking to him. When he realizes that his case was settled on his behalf, it is the most heartbreaking moment of the movie. I can't describe it to you. I cried, man. You can just see in his eyes he's in such deep pain. I can't imagine what it must have been like for your parents or your guardians to have settled an SA case without talking to you. But at the same time, can you blame them? They've been living in poverty for their entire lives. Of course, they were going to take the settlement. So all that's left is Yondu's testimony, and that only implicates the principal. However, Inho and the girl from the Human Rights Center, they were able to find undeniable proof, basically CP, of the principal and Yuri. And at the time, she was less than 13 years old, so the settlement doesn't matter according to the law. So even after all the rigging they could possibly do with the lawyer and getting false testimonies, they are in the end found guilty. And their sentence? A few months in jail and probation. I guess the rigging worked after all. Not gonna lie, I wanted to kill somebody at this point when I first watched this movie. I was furious. I've never really been this furious after watching a movie. This was insane. Absolutely insane. In the end, it turns out that they had indeed bribed the prosecution and the judge too. From the victim's point of view, all of that pain, all of that suffering, not just the experience, but to also have to relay all of that pain in front of strangers and for them to try to dismantle your perspective, your experiences, all of that. For what exactly? Probation? Because justice wasn't served in this case, Mintu ended up taking the matters into his own hands. He killed the teacher who was responsible for his little brother's death, and he and the teacher both ended up dying. And it starts protests all over. Inho is at the protests with the picture of Minsu. This is heartbreaking. In the movie, nothing really changes. They are not able to reopen the case. However, the kids are able to process and move past what had happened. As depressing as this movie is, it is also very realistic. The bureaucracy, justice system, all of it. Also, it portrays how evil is able to survive. Like, think of the teachers who were working at the school. Did they never notice the brutal physical assault? I mean, they must have. It was literally happening in the staff room area, but they didn't say anything. Maybe they thought, okay, yeah, sure, it's physical punishment, but a bit severe, but not too bad. I believe most people who were working there kind of knew something bad was going on, but they refused to look. Why? Because their interests aligned with the predators. They were given a job from the professor, and most likely they even paid a huge bribe. From when Inho was hired, we see that he also had to pay a bribe, but it was a smaller amount because he was recommended by a professor that was a friend of the principal. So he's paying a smaller amount for sure, but still, it's a huge amount. That money came from the security deposit from the rented home that his mother was living in. They had to give that up for Inho's job. So possibly the other teachers who got a job at the school, they had to pay a lot more than Inho. And so of course there's a lot to lose for them. And so even if someone noticed something weird is going on, they chose not to act on it, not to dig deeper. Rather, they were happy in their willful ignorance. And isn't that how it works in real life? In real life, there are not people who are born evil and they'll just, let SA happen on their watch and they won't do anything about it because they love money too much and blah, blah, blah. They're just evil, bad people. No, that's not true. That's not real. That's a cartoonish way of looking at the world. In reality, it was more along the lines of what Inho experienced. He did notice that the kids were acting weird and strange, but hey, he asked his colleague about it, and he said that the kids are just like that. Inho listens to the authority figure in the room and dismisses his concern. Even when he hears screaming coming out of the girl's bathroom, he doesn't actually go in to investigate. The security guard stops him and he's the authority figure in the room. He says the kids just do that, and that's that. He doesn't go in. And of course he should have. Of course the other teachers should have asked more questions. However, you can also understand why they didn't. The authorities in the room said, no, you don't have to, or it's just the way these kids are. And we listen to the authorities. It's interesting that we never see Inho ask the kids what's going on or if there's something that they would like to share with them. We do see him ask the teachers because he's concerned about the kids. We see him search the database because he's concerned about the kids. But he never asks the kids directly. Even when Mr. Park is brutally beating up Minsu, we see Inho ask the teacher, what's wrong? He doesn't try to intervene. Of course, we don't know if the kids would have told him the truth. Once Yuri was about to fall off a window and Inho saves her, but her reaction says a lot. She is fearful of Inho. Of course, She doesn't know if she can trust him. However, the one time in the movie that we see someone ask the kids what's going on and what's wrong, that is in the hospital by the human rights activist, Yondu tells her the truth. So because of that, I believe that it just boiled down to the fact that nobody asked the kids what's going on. And that's the insidious part about it, isn't it? The principal, the chief, they aligned the staff's interest in such a way that, first of all, they're not going to ask more questions. Frankly, I believe they were hand-picked to be people who would not ask questions. If somebody starts asking too many questions, you can always transfer them, right? And secondly, even if they somehow accidentally uncover this horrific shit that's going on, there's a huge possibility that they will actually just not report it because, well, their livelihood is on the line. Everything that they worked for, the bribe money, their livelihood, this is quite a prestigious job. How will they get another one in the same field? And it's not all just BS. When Inho, along with the human rights activists, they go and report the crimes, well, guess what? Inho is fired. He doesn't have a job. He lost the bribe money and now he doesn't have a job. He doesn't have the apartment that he was staying at. He's sleeping at the human rights activist's office. This was a very heavy movie. But if there is a movie that changed the world, it is this movie. Because of this movie, there was a law that got passed in South Korea, and the original case that the movie was based on, well, that was reopened as well. So I am happy about that, Even though it was a gut-wrenching and very depressing movie, it had a huge positive outcome in this world. That is amazing, and I love that. Oh yes, one thing. I cannot end this video without talking about the most satisfying moment in this movie. This happens around midway through, right when Inho learns what's going on, but he's still working at the school and the crimes haven't been reported yet, so it happens right in between. He is standing outside the principal's office with a flower pot in his hand. He hears Mr. Park beating Minsu. The door opens and Mr. Park and Minsu leave, and the principal gestures Inho to come in. He does not go in. He runs after Mr. Park and he smashes the flower pot against his fucking head. I was like, heck yeah, bitch! Fucking got what it deserved! This was the most satisfying moment of the movie. I know these are just actors, okay? I'm aware of that. It's just, well, they're pretty fucking good, okay? Anywho, well, that's all. I believe everything that I wanted to say about this movie is now out of my system. Okay, I'm gonna leave you guys on this positive note. If you like this video, subscribe and stuff. I don't know what videos I'm planning in the future. I'm thinking right now that maybe I want to make a video on Borrasca. I don't know yet. Okay, that's all I have for today. I will see you guys in the future. Take care. Bye-bye. Take care.